On this episode of Odessa After Dark, myself and Susan Rogers from Odessa Crime Stoppers have a phone interview with Matt Drzewiecki, who lives in Ohio. He is the husband of missing person Jeannette Drzewiecki. She went missing from Odessa in September of 1982, and nobody has seen or heard from her since. We talked to him about the night she went missing and some more details of the search for her. Following this, we have a new book review by Randy Ham. But first, Zoe Alvarado goes to the first art walk in Odessa. So take it away, Zoe.
Hi, I'm Zoe Alvarado and this is Odessa After Dark. We are here at the art walk taking place at, honestly, there's not really a street address for this, but anyways, we found one of the artists here at the art walk today. Can you please tell us who you are?
My name's Beth, and I've been working with gourds for about 10 years now. What attracted me to gourds is, they're a natural plant, and when they dry, they come out like wood, and so you can do a lot of things. You can do carving with wood burning tools, you can bead them, paint them, and I just really like the way they feel because they have very sensuous shapes.
So what's the whole process of getting a gourd ready for artsy stuff?
Well, let me show you. A raw gourd looks like this. They grow on the ground. They come in lots of shapes and sizes. You clean the outside, and on the inside they have, I don't know, we call it gourd paper, but it's almost like a foamy, fluffy. These are what gourd seeds look like, and you clean it all out. Once you clean it out, then you just work on it like gourd, and you can, or like wood, and you can see that they're thick. Some are really thick, some are kind of thin. You can see that there's varieties in thickness, but you can see the awesome variety in gourds. This one, for example, is called a warty gourd. I mean, this
it feels weird.
Yeah, and this one to me looks like something from outer space. But that's how they grow.
If anybody wanted to get in contact with you to buy one of your items, where can they get a hold of you?
Well, probably the easiest way would be to email me at my email address, which is Beth E. Meyerson, so it's BETHEMEYERSON@gmail.com.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for letting us peruse your stand here and letting us interview you. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's fun to be out here today.
Hi, we found another person here at the art walk today, and her name is Alina. And Alina, please tell us what you do.
I am a painter of many things. I usually do mixed media. I use a lot of clocks. I like for my paintings to be somewhat alive and have motion and, kind of have some, it gives it a little bit more feeling and depth to it. I do use a lot of mixed media stuff, as you can see. Get back here. I do use a lot of things like this. I make custom jewelry boxes and stash boxes. I do sketches, and I just try to kind of touch on base on everything, I've dabbled in sculpting and tattooing as well. But,
This is cool. I like that.
And it's kind of hard to see out here, but this one has lights in it. The eyes light up and change colors.
Oh, cool. So what drew you here to do the first art walk ever in Odessa, Texas?
Well, 2 weeks ago there was a small art show out of that computer shop across the street. It's the same guy that organized it, and I was part of that one. It was very small, not a whole lot of people came by. So that was kind of its beginning stages that came into this art walk. So I always look for, local shows to do. I like to be a part of, the community art effort, and I think it's really important to get as many people involved as possible because art is everything to me anyway. So yeah, I try to touch base with all the other local artists. I try to be a part of it because I think it is important for community to have good, strong art.
So if people want to get in contact with you for one of your art pieces today, where could they find you?
I have my card here. Hand this out to everybody. I live in San Angelo, but I do custom things. Call or email me and I can send them out to you.
So this is a man who started it all. Can you please tell the camera your name?
Axel Baumgarten.
Okay. So what brought you to come up with this whole art walk?
Well, the first show, Cerebral Revolution, really inspired me because I thought that nothing really cool ever happened here, and as an artist I was distraught, you know. And then Adriana did that show, and it really inspired me, and I wanted to do it more than just once a year. And so I did a mini show over there at A1 Computers, and the turnout wasn't as big as I wanted it to. So I thought, you know, the more artists, the bigger impact. And so I got to talk to CBS here, and they okayed it to use this lot. And so I started rounding up artists so that we could all come together and sort of make it a big thing here in town.
Then you're an artist yourself, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us what you do?
Yeah, I do glass blown. It's technically called lamp working. I make all sorts of cool little trees and stuff like that. You can touch them; they're pretty durable.
No way.
Yep. Occasionally they break, but it only takes a couple of minutes to fix them. And oops.
I don't want to break anything.
No, that's all right.
Usually they try to go home with you.
And my girlfriend and I also do all this glass jewelry right here. She does most of it because I suck at it. But
at least you're honest.
Yeah. And we also do this clay work right here, and there's paintings and drawings inside of that box right there.
So will this happen? When will the next show be?
I'm hoping to talk to, Flex is supposed to be getting this lot now. I'm hoping to either talk to Flex or somebody else in town that has an empty lot that we could do this again, at least, you know, once every other month or something like that.
So if people want to get in contact with you about your art or even the art walk, where can they get a hold of you?
They can go on my Facebook page or my webpage, which is facebook.com/theartisticsouls, and the website is just theartisticsouls.com.
Sorry.
So we stopped at the bar. I'm sitting in the truck with the baby. She goes inside, and it wasn't 60 seconds later, and every dancer that was working came running out, and they're all standing around the truck looking at the baby that I'm sitting here holding. Back then we didn't have car seats either, you know. We had an infant carrier, and they all oohed and awed over the baby. She came back out. We went back home. She made dinner, fed the baby, and it was a little after 7. And she said, I'm going to run back up to the bar. I want to talk to Johnny to see how soon I can start at least waiting tables to get used to being back on my feet.
Now, was she depressed at all?
What's that?
Besides anxious for money, was she depressed at all?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, things were great. I mean, we had a beautiful baby girl. I mean, both of us we were perfectly thrilled. We weren't real happy with the financial situation, you know? I mean, that was kind of ugly. But we were, I mean, both of us were just tickled to death with the fact that we had a 7-pound, 2-ounce baby girl that had all 10 fingers and all 10 toes, and she was bright and beautiful and didn't even come out pink. She came out flesh toned.
Well, that's
you know,
good.
I mean, the doctors marveled over her for a while. And
Well, you know, the facts and things, some of that I've read, but, you know, as far as dealing with the emotions of the people connected, none of that you know, you're the first person connected with the case that I've got to talk to. And so I've always wondered, was she depressed because of what's going to, you know, what we're about to cover next, some of the unsavory characters that were around the dollhouse, and people say were connected to her. So
I used to go to the bar every single night that she worked. Every single night. And I had a buddy, his name was Don Phillips. He still lives in Odessa somewhere. Donald Phillips. Donald J. Phillips, I think. And his hair and her hair were about the same color. And he wore his hair parted down the middle like she did. And everybody thought he was her brother. And we never, other than the dancers, we never told anybody anything different. That was Don. That was, she went by the name of Cherry. That was Cherry's brother, and I was just her brother's friend. Because when you're creating an image that's going to generate income, you don't want to discourage the hopefuls, you know what I mean?
right, you want that $5 tip instead of that $1 tip.
Yeah. And she would make her money. She'd come over, she'd sit down at our table for a few minutes, she'd sit next to Don, and she would lay money on the table, and I'd pay for my pitcher of beer, and then she'd get up, she'd start dancing, and I'd go up and I'd slip her a 10 or a 20, because some of the oil field show-offs, some of the ones that were still working, they didn't want to be outdone. So, you know, if I tipped her a 10, a couple of them would tip her 10s or 20, you know? I mean, she made monster money up there. And she enjoyed it. To her, it was nothing more than hanging out topless on the beach in Germany or dancing in one of the, she always called them discotheques. Germany's just a little more liberal than we are.
In some things, they sure are. Now, the night that she disappeared, you said earlier that you were with your baby, with your daughter. And so how many hours went by before you just freaked out? I mean, I would...
Well, it was about, she said she left, the shift change was at 7 o'clock. And Linda, the girl that was working during the day, she stays there while the cash drawers get changed over and they count the money and make sure all that works out. And at about 9:30, I thought, man, she's been gone an awful long time, you know? Baby's still asleep. We didn't have a telephone at the time. And like I said, we only had one vehicle, and she had it. She didn't even take her purse.
Yeah, you had the white truck.
She reached over, picked up her keys out of her purse, left her purse sitting on the coffee table, bent down, kissed the baby on the forehead, looked at me and winked and said, I'll see you in a few minutes. And I realized it was almost midnight. And I got up and I started pacing. Now I'm speeding on top of it. And I'm pacing around going, where the hell is she at? Okay. Maybe all of her friends
50 people a night in there. And I can promise you that details will disappear into the crowd in no time. I mean, it all turns into a blur up in that place. I go up there every night, you know? And they said, oh yeah, we'll get somebody on it. 1 week later, Bob Houston, the guy I told you I'd been doing construction work with, he had gotten a hold of me and told me that he'd gotten another job and wanted to know if I'd work with him. And I told him, I said, I'll try, but I was absolutely just emotionally destroyed.
Well, plus you had a baby to take care of.
Yeah, well, his wife, Helen said she would keep the baby for me during the day.
Okay.
And they lent me money to buy formula and buy bottles because we didn't have any use for them, you know. So I got the bottles and formula, and she said she'd take care of the baby. And on Thursday morning, I think it was, we're in the truck on our way to work, and a news report came over that said the body of an unidentified woman had been found buried on a shallow drive out to an oil field. And Bob looked at me, and I teared up, and he said, do you want to go call the police? And I said, yeah, I do. So I called the police, and the guy said, no, it's not your wife. And I said, they said she's unidentified. How do you know? He said, this is a Mexican girl, 5'2", and she was 3 months pregnant. She was snatched up out of the Safeway parking lot in a black pickup truck. And if you look back, if you go back through the news back at that time, you'll find who I'm talking about. And I was like, well, have you heard anything on Jeannette? And he said, no, we haven't heard a thing, but we've notified the state police, given them your wife's, description, your truck's description. He said, so we're looking. I'm like, okay. The following Monday.
That's when they found the truck?
The following Monday, which was the 20th. On the 20th of September, at about 7 o'clock, almost a week to the minute, Bob was bringing me home in his pickup truck, and the two brothers I told you worked at the Phillips 66 station. Mike came running out, waving his arms when he saw us driving by, and I told Bob, you can drop me off here. So Bob dropped me off, and he said, Matt, a wrecker just went around the corner towing your truck. And I'm like, what? He said, they just went around the corner, and I ran. The guy was coming off my porch, walking back out to his wrecker, and I came running up. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? He said, we had a call on this as an abandoned vehicle on the south end. I lived in central Odessa. The doll's house was on the north end, and there was this hotel, little motel, on the south end of town.
Correct.
And I said, what do you mean it was reported as abandoned? He said, well, I called it in. He said the police said they had nothing on this vehicle and that I could go ahead and impound it. And I drove down to the motel where they said my truck was found. And it was an Indian family. And I asked the woman what she knew about the truck, and she said, oh, last week sometime it pulled in here. It was a little after dark, and she said 3 people got out of the truck. I said, okay. Was it 2 women and a man, 3 women, 2 men and a woman? She said, I couldn't tell. She said, but the next morning, the truck was still here. And I'm like, okay. She said 2 days later, a couple of Mexican guys pushed it over into that parking lot and took some stuff out of the truck.
The week after, because from what I can gather, that the people at the dollhouse were not...
I went to the bar next.
Okay, because they were not forthcoming. Would you agree?
Well, I went to the bar next.
Okay.
And I walked in. Linda was still there. And I walked in and I said, do you remember last week when Sherry came in? She said, yeah, what was that? Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that? And I started crying. And she said, what's the matter? I said, she never made it back home that night. And she's like, oh my God, you're kidding me. And I said, no, and the police say that they've been questioning everybody. I mean, did they question you? She said, nobody's been up here to talk to me or anybody. And my heart just fell out of my chest. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. The police haven't been here at all? And she's like, no. And I said, well, what happened when she was here? She said she came in and sat down at the bar, said she was going to wait to talk to Johnny. Johnny called, said he wasn't coming in, that the night bartender, Dan or Don or whatever his name was going to do the cash drawer switch, which he did that frequently. And she said, well, bring me a Jack and Coke. She said, I haven't been able to have a drink. This is my first drink with, not being pregnant. And she said, there was a guy that sat down next to her, and she talked to him for a minute and then kind of blew him off. And she looked at Linda, finished her drink, and said, I need to get home to the baby, and walked out the side door of the bar. She said that the guy that had been sitting next to her walked out a few minutes after her, but she didn't really think anything about it. And that was the last she saw her. And days went by, weeks went by. I called this guy and he said, well, we might have a lead. There's a customer he's a driver that drives back and forth from Dallas to Odessa and whatever, and said that he saw a girl that looked like her in a club in Dallas.
So that's where that came.
Okay.
I'm like, okay. So, what's going to happen? He said, well, we're going to look into this. And I hitchhiked to Dallas. And I don't know if you've ever been on the Strip, where the strip clubs are in Dallas.
Can't say I have, no.
They're not very close together, okay?
Well, it's Dallas, so that I could relate to, okay.
It's probably a 7 or 8 mile strip, and it's a mile or more between bars. I walked that whole strip. I went into bars. I talked to bouncers and doormen and bartenders and showed the picture and asked them. And by the time the night was over, it was, I don't know, about time for the bars to close. I found a corner between a couple of buildings and sat there and cried till I fell asleep, and the next day I hitchhiked home. And I talked to the cop again. I said, did you find out anything? He said, well, if a person really wants to disappear, they can disappear.
Right, it's not illegal.
I said, okay, what are you telling me here? Did you find her? And he said, well, even if I did, I couldn't tell you. And I said, what do you mean, even if you did, you couldn't tell me?
Mr. Drzewiecki, my name's Susan Rogers, and I'm with the Crime Stopper program.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, just for a little peace of mind, I've dealt with cases exactly like you're talking about, where people want to disappear from their lives. And when that happens, we remove the case as a missing persons case. So I can tell you from my experience, and I was not around back when this happened, we've done a lot of research on your wife, and we replay your wife's story on our Crime of the Weeks and things like that to keep it out in the forefront, trying to get information for that. I've been doing Crime Stoppers for 25 years, and I've had her on my list ever since I started doing this. But we want you to know that from our end of it, and Daniel does this with us all the time, he helps keep these cases out in the forefront. And one of the reasons we do that is because people, you know, their lives change, and we want them to come forward, and, you know, they get families, they create consciences, and they, you know, in the hopes that someone will come forward.
She was never made a U.S. citizen.
Okay. What about her parents? Let me ask a couple of questions.
She was granted permanent residency in 1964, I think. Or 1963.
Let me ask I mean, obviously you would have told us if you heard from her. I mean, basically, since the day that she left to go there, you nor anybody else that you know of has had contact with her, has heard from her, or anything?
And absolutely not.
Because that was the main reason, because, you know, we read reports about her going to Dallas, so if you knew she was in Dallas, there's no sense to have this case open.
Yeah, we're trying to clarify that nobody, to your knowledge, has had contact with her.
No, but there is one piece of information that I have tried to kind of capitalize upon, that Jeannette had told me that when they came back to the United States, because her mother had taken her after Tyrone had brought her to the United States and legally adopted her, Elizabeth went back to Germany and took Jeannette with her.
Okay.
And they lived there for a couple of years before Jeannette decided she just couldn't live with her mother anymore and made arrangements, and Tyrone said she could come back and live with him and Susie, which was his next wife.
Okay.
But she was going to have to conform to his rules and his whole deal, because he was living at Fort Carson and the whole thing. And she had agreed.
I have one other question before we have to go here.
Okay.
Did she have any contacts with anybody in Germany, or any reason that would make you believe that she would go back?
She couldn't have gone back to Germany.
Okay.
And the reason was she did not have her passport.
Didn't have a passport.
Because she didn't have a Social Security card.
No, she had a passport, but she didn't have it.
Okay.
Oh, she didn't take anything with her.
She didn't. Well, that too. But her mother had possession of her passport.
It's just, you know, after 30 years, it's difficult to get tips, but somebody knows.
And I feel like the DNA thing is the next route we need to go, because the officers that I'm dealing with over there now are real interested in these these cold cases is what this is.
Yes, exactly.
And we've got some guys working on them. Of course, they've got other cases too, so we have to get the time when we can with them. But the fact that we don't have a DNA sample on file is something I think they're going to jump right on.
That would be phenomenal, because even after 30 years, I mean, every September it just kills my wife to watch the fact that it still hurts me. Right,
absolutely, absolutely. And we want you to know we're not trying to intrude in your life and bring up old things or whatever.
No,
you know,
no. I don't feel that at all.
Okay, super.
What I actually feel is that there might be a glimmer of hope at finding an answer to something that has eaten away at me like cancer for 30 years.
Coordinator for the Ector County Library. Happy New Year! I'm here to talk to you about The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I have to say this is absolutely one of my favorite books that I've read in the last 2 or 3 years. It's very hard to describe without giving it away, but I'm going to give it a shot. This is Erin Morgenstern's debut novel. It came out in 2009, and it's about a magical circus that is actually the battlefield for a great contest that's taking place between 2 magicians. But instead of competing directly, they use pawns. One is a boy, one is a girl, so obviously we have a little bit of Romeo and Juliet going on, where these 2 pawns end up falling in love with each other, and they wage this battle without knowing what the outcome is going to be or what the consequences are going to be. one of the reasons that I like this so much is because Erin Morgenstern is a very imaginative writer, and this circus has a very dreamlike quality. It doesn't have elephants and giraffes. It has a tent full of dreams. It has a tent that is all ice. It has all kinds of mystical, magical things that just lend themselves to a beautiful, beautiful scenario and a backdrop for a beautiful love story. I'm very excited because this was just recently acquired by Summit Entertainment to be filmed in the next couple of years. So if you have a few minutes to take and grab a cup of coffee or a cup of hot tea and sit down and curl up and lose yourself in the world of the night circus.
Well, I thank everybody for watching this episode. In 6 weeks, we'll have our final episode of our first season, episode number 22. We're very excited because we'll look back at some of the things that we talked about over the previous season. Isn't that right, Sally? That is right. And so join us in 2 weeks when we present episode number 20. Thank you and have a good night.